Exit83? Well, here we are, our last Wednesday night Exit83 online YouTube broadcast. It's going to be a great night, but before we get into any of that, 4K Ben is going to bring us some extreme Exit83 news.
Exit83, since this is our last Wednesday night online service, I thought I would do something extreme. This is my skydiving buddy, Chad. We're about to jump out of this plane. Here we go! Our Father's Day service broadcast and our last Sunday broadcast this Sunday at 10:55 on YouTube. We've got some special Father's Day stuff and starting a new 3-week series this week. Don't forget that our first in-person Exit83 service will be Wednesday, June 24th up at the church outside on the lawn. We will be social distancing, so wear a mask if you want. Come worship and hang out with us. Our first Sunday service will be June 28th, but not in the morning. We will be meeting from 6 to 7:30 p.m. outside on the lawn at church. I gotta pull this parachute, it's time to go.
What is going on, Exit83? I am pumped to be here. Yes, I am alive. Yes, I did go skydiving. It was a blast. If you haven't been, you gotta go. It is so fun, dude. This week we have some more diving board fails. We're just gonna kind of dive right into this first one. I have not watched these, but the way that you play is you gotta guess if they nailed it or if they failed it. So just type in the YouTube chat what you think is gonna happen in these videos, all right? Let's jump right in. First up, this looks like she's on like a diving team. Nailed it or failed it? What do you guys think? I'm gonna guess nailed it. She looks like a pro. Let's find out. What was that? Literally, what was that? Oh my gosh. Oh, that was hard to watch. That was a failed it. If you guessed failed it, congrats. That was rough. Next up, this dude's literally at a lake on the jankest diving board I've ever seen. Nailed it or failed it? 100% I'm saying failed it. There is no, that is literally like a plank of wood. Let's see what happens. Clean! Nailed it! Literally better than the girl on the diving team. That was insane. All right, next, the high dive. We don't mess around with these. Oh gosh, if you failed this, bro, oh, that's gonna hurt so bad. Nailed it or failed it? What do you guys think? Oh gosh, please nail it. Please. All right, let's find out. Okay, he's gonna go for the big jump. He's not holding back. Oh, dude, the backflip. Oh, you could literally hear the smack, dude. Oh my gosh. High dive was a fail for sure. Next up, a trampoline and a pool. This is like childhood 101. Oh, what a leap. That is like Superman soaring through the sky over to this pool. Did he nail it or did he fail it? I mean, that was a pretty strong jump. I'm saying he nailed it. Let's see. No shirt, that's just bonus slap if he fails it. Oh. Okay, we'll take that. He made it over. He nailed it. Clean. Last but not least, a video from Tim's era. This is like the 50s, 1850s. The roof and a pool. Nailed it or failed it. Jumping off the roof into a pool. Have you guys done that? Let me know in the YouTube chat if you guys have ever jumped off a roof into the pool. It looks like a clean jump. I'm going with nailed it. What do you guys think? Let's find out. Jumps off the roof. Cannonball. Clean. Good splash, good form, 10 out of 10, cannonball. He nailed it. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up the game for this week. I think we have a senior spotlight to catch up on, so we're gonna toss it right over to that.
My name is Mackenzie Lee McNutt, and I am graduating from Upland High School. So my sophomore year, my friend comes up to me in choir, and he's like, dude, my friend has a mustard gas bomb in his backpack, and he's gonna let it off during one of the rallies. And I'm like, dude, did you tell someone? No, why would I tell someone? Call my counselor, and we went on lockdown for 3 hours. I was pulled down to the disciplinary office and interviewed by police, FBI, detectives, investigators, all these different people, and I was locked in discipline for 3 hours. They took my phone, my backpack, my homework, my food, everything, and I had to sit there and stare at a wall for 3 hours until they found the guy and found the mustard gas bomb in his backpack. Therefore, I saved the school. Thank you very much. I was heavily involved with choirs, so I was a part of ARIA my freshman year. I was a part of chorale my sophomore, junior, and senior year, and now I am the president of chorale, which is pretty awesome. I was in the jazz choir, the vocal jazz choir, sophomore, junior, and senior year, and as a senior, I'm also in madrigals. I have been a part of the Christian club for a few years, and I was supposed to be president this year, but I gave up that position because I was too busy with all of my other commitments. Church, choir. Probably Hume Lake, San Diego, my 7th grade year, because that was the first time I experienced God on a level higher than stories in Bible school, Sunday school. There's also Mazatlan, my sophomore year when we went to Mazatlan. That was definitely a really, really awesome mission trip that I really grew in. I think I have learned to have a deeper trust in Him, and I've really learned how to practice patience. In the beginning of high school, my dad was no longer a part of my life, and so throughout high school I've learned how to find my security in Christ and not find my security in others, to trust God with everything, and when you give Him that trust, He's going to be faithful and do what's best for you. And when you have that belief that, okay, this is what I really want, but if it's not good for me, God is going to protect me, it's really, really, really refreshing and relieving, and you just feel super free. And I've learned to be patient and wait, and that's hard. I like to do things on my time, but when you do things on God's time, there's definitely a greater outcome. I will be attending Cal Baptist University in the fall 2020, and I will be studying health science, concentration on physician's assistant. Likewise, I will, what am I going to do? I'm going to be taking my Chafee GED over the summer, just to get a few classes out of the way, and then after I graduate from Cal Baptist, I'm going to move on to med school to get my doctorate. Don't get caught up with the little things. Don't get caught up with the way you want to dress or speak or the friends you have. If you get caught up in all of those things that don't really matter, you're gonna miss out. You're definitely gonna miss out on what God has right in front of you. And try adjusting your focus to what God has, not what some guy is doing in the hallway. See people through God's eyes.
Okay, God. You want me to talk to you? Tell him back. Tell me what's going on. What should I do? Give me a signal. I need your guidance, Lord. Please send me a sign. Oh, what's this joker doing now? Okay. All right. I'll try it your way. All right? Lord, I need a miracle. I'm desperate. I need your help, Lord. Please reach into my life. What the? Oh, yeah. I got you.
Matthew 16 in the Bible is a pretty well-known chapter in the Bible. It's where Jesus asks his disciples who they think he is. It's where Jesus tells Peter that he is the rock that he is going to build his church on. Jesus says that if anyone is going to come after him, that they must take up their cross in order to follow him. And all of these things are kind of the well-known interactions that people had with Jesus. But in the beginning of chapter 16, there's this interaction that Jesus has with the religious leaders, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And they ask him to do something that, if we're honest, probably all of us would love for Jesus to do. They say, Jesus, give us a sign. Here's how they put it in Matthew 16, verses 1 to 4. The Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and they tested him by saying, show them a sign from heaven. He replied, when evening comes, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the sign of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a miraculous sign, but none will be given except the sign of Jonah. Then Jesus left them and went away. So the Pharisees and Sadducees are saying, hey, show us a sign from heaven. Now, they're saying this sarcastically. They're like, oh yeah, you're Jesus? You're the Messiah? You're the Son of God? Show us a sign from heaven. Now, I'm not sure they realized what they were asking for. I mean, the history of God showing them signs from heaven were things like a flood, things like plagues all over Egypt with frogs and locusts and turning the Nile into blood and all of these things. And so I know that I would be pretty careful in demanding that God show me a sign that he's real. And yet, it honestly is one of the things that we believe would make believing God or believing in God easier. If he would just show us. And yet, as you read through the Bible, which again is an important reason to read the Bible, is you discover who God is and you discover who his people are. And some of the things that we don't think we would do or we don't think we would struggle with, you see evidence like, oh, you're not the first one to think this. So for those times when we think that if God would just give me some miraculous sign, well, then I would believe. You might not. I might not. Even if I was given some miraculous sign, but we do know that in the history of mankind, They have demanded a sign. But do you really want God to give you that clear of a sign? I mean, imagine if God had some sort of sense of humor where it's like, God, give me a sign that you're real. And he says, all right, acne. So, I don't know, we might want to be careful. But why did they want a sign from heaven? Well, maybe as proof that Jesus was who he actually said he was. Maybe to stir up a problem, because if Jesus were to do something spontaneously miraculous, well, then they could accuse him of witchcraft and sorcery and get everybody against him there. Maybe it's just a lack of faith. And I know that I have definitely, as I'm sure you as well, have gone through times where I'm just going, man, if there was something concrete that I could see, I'd have an easier time believing. Maybe it was to confirm rumors of what they'd heard about Jesus, and now they wanted to see it for themselves. But they tell Jesus, look, we want a sign. We want you to show us a miraculous sign from heaven. And Jesus gets in their face a little bit. Jesus says in the rest of verse 2, he says, when evening comes, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, you say, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. He kind of points out that they're able to predict the weather based on things that they see, and yet they're missing God. And I found this really complicated and intricate weather device. This is called a weather rock. You can find one in your local garden or outside. And what you do is you hang this weather rock on a string and you hang it outside. And when the rock is bright and hot, it's sunny. When it's dark, it's nighttime. If it's wet, it's raining. If it's covered in snow, your weather rock is obviously not in Southern California. Oh, and my weather rock broke. But anyway, this is what Jesus is saying to these guys when it comes to their faith, going, all right, so you call yourself, men of God, or you say that you're able to predict these things, and yet when it comes to actual faith, you're babies. When it comes to actual faith, if it's not something that you can predict even just by your own observations, or if it's not something that you can just figure out by reason, you miss it. And now you're coming to me saying, show us a sign. And Jesus is going, well, look, you cannot interpret the signs of the times. Basically, he's going, the signs of the times. Jesus, I'm here and I'm at work. God has come to earth. Emmanuel, God with us. And you're missing it. And you're now wanting this physical sign of things, thinking that that's going to convince you, and it's not, because your heart is not in tune with the heart of God. Your heart is not looking, you're not in a place where you are actually looking for God, you're looking for a sign. And God has given you a sign. Jesus is going, my presence is the sign, should be the sign. And you're missing it. And you don't even realize it. So now you're coming to me saying, hey, do something impressive. Pull a rabbit out of a hat. Do something tricky. And your heart has missed it. And you guys just don't get it. And this is where I want to bring it back to us, where we just finished this Be Near series, where we've been going, how can we be near to God? And we talked about the first week that a relationship with God is not going to happen accidentally. The second week, we talked about how what is important to God must be important to us. If we want to be near to God, the things that he cares about, we need to care about. And then last week, we looked at the reality of, you want to be near to God? Are you sure? Because it's going to require some major moves in your life where you're going to have faith. You are going to have to let God have authority over your life and invite God to move. And you don't get to put restrictions on him. You don't get to say, oh, but not this part of my life. Do you really want to be near to God? And tonight, I guess I just wanted to take a moment kind of as a, maybe a fourth week of Be Near, but it's a little bit separate in terms of what do you believe about God being near you? What are some of the ways that we get hung up believing that God is with us? What are some of the things that we miss? What are some of the things that we choose not to believe? And then we come back going, God, why aren't you revealing yourself to us? So tonight I want to talk about 3 things real quick for you to consider, because I can't live this for you. Nobody can live this for me. This is that journey of faith, and I want to encourage any of you watching this where you're thinking kind of like the Pharisees or the Sadducees or many believers in Jesus before you, that, oh, well, if I only had this like big fancy miracle, well, then it would be easy to believe. Man, in my life, there are all kinds of things that I point at that are miracles of God, and I somehow excuse them. I somehow talk myself out of believing that that's actually God doing that. Oh, no, that was just, whatever it is, science. That was just coincidence. That was just luck. Are you looking for God? I want to encourage you to look for God, because what I see when I read this is God revealing himself over and over and over again. And if I'm willing to, I can stop and I can look back over my life and see that God has been revealing himself in my life and through my life in all kinds of ways that I could easily either ignore or miss or attribute to something else. So here I want to run through these really quick. So first, when we believe that God has left us, we don't feel him or something happens in our life and we believe that God has spontaneously just left. Now, let me say this, that you believing that God, you're going to have to extend faith, either by believing that God isn't with you. That takes faith, because we're going to talk about in just a second, God has made himself known. So you're either going to have the faith that God isn't with you or that God doesn't exist, or you're going to have the faith in what you can't see, what you can't fully explain, what you can't fully prove and say, here is the hard evidence. Although we have all kinds of hard evidence, there are times in our life where it may feel like God is far. What are you going to choose to believe? Because this is where I will return to Scripture and see the evidence, the promise of God that he's with me. That I can see that he hasn't forgotten about me. Way back in Deuteronomy chapter 31, in verse 8, it says, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He's talking to his followers. He's talking to the believers, his children, who are going, okay, God, we're scared. God, life is overwhelming. We need you to lead us. And so he says, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. Michaela talked about this on her daily Devo on Monday. This is the promise of God, that he's not going to leave you. Now, will you believe that? Will you choose to put your faith out there and go, you know what? I'm going to choose that God is who he says he is. Will do what he promises to do, even in those moments when I don't fully experience him, or I don't see him and I can't easily be like, oh, that's obviously God. When Carter was a little boy, we would go someplace and he loved to just run off. He would want to go explore things and he'd want to just run away from me. I mean, I'm hoping, maybe he was already embarrassed of me, but he would just take off. And there came a point, I remember this day, we were at the mall. And I remember this day, we're walking down through the mall and Carter just takes off. And there was this moment of me realizing this is something he needs to learn, that he needs to still depend on me. Yes, he can just run off, but he needs to understand that he still needs to depend on me, and he still needs to be in my presence. So I just stepped behind a pillar and I watched. And Carter ran ahead of me a little bit, and then he stopped and he looked around, and when he looked, he didn't see me. Now, you may be thinking, oh, Jeff, you're a jerk. Why would you do that? Here's what it is. Okay. Was he ever out of my sight? Never. Was he ever so far away from me that I could not have immediately stepped in to any situation that he got into? No. I was always there. But there was definitely that moment, and you could see it on his face, that moment of him feeling like I wasn't there. In that moment, if he were able to put words to it, he could have said, oh, my dad abandoned me. Why doesn't my dad love me anymore? Why did my dad leave me on my own? I was always there. But he was so focused on running off. He was so focused on where he wanted to go and what he wanted to see and what he had in his mind to do that he just turned his focus away from me. We do that with God. God has never left us. But we have all kinds of opportunities where we can just run ahead, doing our own thing, thinking we're fine, we can handle this, we can go on our own. God is always there. And he is always ready and willing to step in and make himself known and to lead us. But sometimes when we cry out to God and we go, God, where are you? Why don't you love me? Have you forgotten about me? It's not that God has gone anywhere. And God is immediately ready to step into our lives. But we will go, okay, we believe God's left us. Do you have the faith to believe that the situation that you're in right now, God is right there with you? God is ready to move miraculously in whatever situation you're facing. And yet, could it be that it doesn't feel that way because your focus is on what you want to do? You've run off. You've got your own bright ideas. We've been talking about this on Sundays in the GOAT series, where Samuel had his own ideas of, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to handle this myself. Could it be that God, it's not that God isn't with you, but that you have stopped looking for him and you don't see that he's there? You won't trust that he's there. Even if you're not seeing him and feeling him, he's there. But that leads to the second thing, where there's the reality that God reveals himself to us, but we don't see it. God is showing that he's real. God is showing that he's with us, and yet we are so focused on controlling our life and doing what we need to do or fending for ourselves because, oh, I'm mature, I'm all grown up, I can handle this. God is showing us that he's there, and God can do infinitely more than we ever could, but our thought is that, you know what, man, why doesn't God show himself to me? There's this passage in Isaiah, who Isaiah was a prophet, and in Isaiah 65, he says, God says, I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. To a nation that did not call on my name, I said, I'm here. I'm here. He's trying to get their attention. He's going, look, I'm here, but they're not looking. All day long, I have held out my hands to an obstinate people, stubborn people who are determined to make their own way. I've held out my hands to an obstinate people who walk in ways not good. Listen to this. Pursuing their own imaginations. What God's saying here is going, look, I am making myself known. I am making myself available to people where they could see that I'm real. They could see that I'm powerful. They could see that I am with them. But instead, they're stubborn. And I love the way he says it, who walk in ways not good, pursuing their own imaginations. Their own imaginations of who God is. Their own version of God. Their own imagination of what will make them happy. their own imagination of what is real. Are you having a hard time seeing God? Because your faith is based on your own imagination. Your faith is based on what makes sense to you. Your faith is based on what is obvious to you. And when we do that, we go way off all on our own, and we're going to have a hard time seeing God because we're so consumed with seeing us. But here's what Paul said in Romans 1:20. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen. And we may stop there and go, what? They have? Being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. God has been revealing himself to his creation since the beginning. God is able to make himself known through what he's made, and he's able to meet people right there in that moment if they are willing to acknowledge that, guess what? There's something more than them. There's something more powerful than they are. There's something more powerful than you are. There's someone smarter than you, someone who has a bigger picture than you, someone who has a better plan than you. Will you believe that? Will I believe that? Because it's in those things that God is revealing himself and going, look, from the beginning, since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, the proof of God's existence, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen. Have you been looking? Or has God only existed so far as you can figure him out? So far as it makes sense to you. But if we are willing to look and go, all right, God, I want you to show yourself to me and use whatever means necessary that you need to do that. I believe, I know, it's promised right here that you'll see him. And it will be the evidence you're looking for. And I mean, God has revealed himself to me in all kinds of ways, in some really unique, unexpected ways. Times when I'm just staring out a window and something in nature happens where it's like, oh, that's just nature. But God has revealed. Maybe you're driving down the road, you're just staring out the window, watching stuff go by, and God brings to light, hey, these mountains didn't just get here. Maybe there are times in life where you look at and you're listening to a song on the radio. And maybe this is a song that you've heard 1,000 times, some worship song, some song that is talking about Jesus, talking about God, and you've heard it, you could sing along to it, but God highlights a line in it that you're just like, recently that's happened to me in a song where the line is, break my heart for what breaks yours. Everything I am for your kingdom's cause. It's the song Hosanna. And like I've heard that song, I've led that song, I've sang that a lot, but just more recently that cry, that prayer, that's God revealing his heart. It's through a song that some human wrote, but God is using that in my life. That's an expression of God. And God will lead us. And so in these moments where we go, God's not revealing himself to us, are you looking around? Because God will reveal himself. And yeah, there are definitely times when it is more obvious, or I more quickly go, oh, well, that was God. God provides something that my family needs, or God provides something financially, or God provides something fun, something that I want. Somebody gives me a guitar, or whatever. And there are definitely those moments where I'm super quick to be like, oh, that was God. What about the times when I'm at my house and I'm playing ping pong with my kids, and God just makes my heart super aware of the blessing from Him that my kids are. And that this time when, we've been stuck in the house. We've been quarantined and we feel like we're missing out on all these things. And God reveals, Jeff, do you see how I'm at work in your family? And it's being revealed through ping pong. Are we looking for the ways that God is revealing Himself to us? That God is revealing His heart? But we tend to miss that when all we are willing to accept, the only thing that we'll pay attention to, well, God, if you talk to me through a burning bush, well, then I'll listen. Well, God, if you do some huge miraculous thing, well, then I'll believe in you. Then I'll know that you're there. And what God's trying to tell us is, I'm always here. Are you looking? Or do you have your own idea of what experiencing God looks like? And you're unwilling to recognize my invisible qualities that are all around you, or the things that I am doing in and through your life that may not seem super impactful, and you're missing it. And you're missing my heart. And when that happens, when we stop looking for the ways that God is present with us, the impact that a lot of times it has is that we stop expecting God to move. We just figure, I haven't felt God move or seen God move in however I expect Him to move in quite a while, and so I'm going to stop expecting. And we have all been in a place somewhere in our lives when we think that we kind of act like God's a lottery ticket. The few times in my life when I've been given a lottery ticket or someone, I know somebody who gets a lottery ticket, the expectation is you're probably not going to win. There's nothing. And every now and then, I got my dollar back. I won my dollar back. But that's really, there's no real expectation that you're going to win the lottery. And a lot of times we treat God that way, where we go, okay, God, yes, I believe He's all powerful. I believe that He can do miraculous things, but He's probably not going to. But I'll head off to youth group, not expecting God to do anything, but I'll head off there anyway. I'll go to church, not because I think God's really going to be at work there. I'll pray, not thinking that God is actually going to talk to me, but I'll go ahead and pray. And we end up just going through these religious exercises without the expectation of the God who in Ephesians 3, Paul addresses Him and says, so to the God who is able to do immeasurably more than anything we could ask for or imagine. Is that the God that you worship? Is that the God that you expect to move? Is that the God that you believe is near you? Because if I believe that God is able to do immeasurably more than anything I could ask for or imagine, I want to be near that God. If that's the God that I believe loves me, I am going to be a whole lot slower to get insecure and think that I've got to fight to be important. And yet, we get so set in believing that, God's probably going to let us down. So we stop expecting. And when we stop expecting, we stop looking. There's an incredible interaction in the book of Exodus where God speaks to Moses and tells Moses, hey, go to Egypt and tell my people that I'm going to set them free. And so Moses goes, and in Exodus 6-9 says, therefore say to the Israelites, so this is what God is telling Moses to say, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I'll bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. So this is what God is saying to the people. So Moses goes. Moses reported this to the Israelites. So Moses goes to Egypt and he tells the Israelites everything that God said, that God promised to do. Look at how they responded. But they didn't listen to him because of the discouragement and cruel bondage. So Moses goes and says, this is what God is promising. And the people go, yeah, but probably not. No, Moses, thanks for trying to get our hopes up, but no, it's not going to happen. How often do we treat our relationship with God that way? Where we have what God promises. We have the evidence of God's presence. We have the evidence of God's presence all around us. And he's wanting to show himself to us. He's wanting to move in and through our lives. And we go, it's been a rough year, so I guess God's left me alone. Can I just be another voice of encouragement to you? This should be the most important voice of encouragement to you. Where we look at God and who God promises to be and what God promises to do in and through our lives. And our encouragement doesn't come from whether we get freed from quarantine and, we get to meet as youth group again, live and in person. All of our problems and all of our discouragement's going to go away. No, it won't. Life is going to continue to be hard for the rest of your life. How's that for a pep talk? There are going to be battles. There are going to be things that discourage us. And yet we can trust that God is near if we will put our faith in him and not just go with how we're feeling or how things are currently going. And is everything the way that we can predict it? Is everything the way that we want it? Are we demanding of God, give me a sign that I will consider a sign? Give me evidence that I will call evidence. And we're going to end up missing the heart of God. So God, right now, I pray. Lord God, I pray over all of us because we all have this tendency to think that somehow you haven't revealed yourself to us. Somehow you haven't showed us that you are near, that you love us, that you have a purpose and a plan for us. So God, I pray not for a sign. I'm not praying and asking for evidence, God. You've given us evidence. Lord, I pray that you would bring our hearts to life. I pray that you would wake us up from the things in our life where we have gone to sleep and it's not that you have not revealed yourself. We have been blind to see it. And I pray that you would forgive us. And God, that you would bring us to life, that you would open our eyes, you'd breathe breath into our souls. And God, that we would recognize that you are right here with us and that you have a perfect plan, a perfect promise for our life, that we can have life in you. So God, come and do that work miraculously in us. Use people in our lives to speak hope to us. And God, help us to see you everywhere we look. In Jesus' name, amen. In Hebrews, it says don't stop gathering together. Don't stop meeting together, as some people are in the habit of doing, but look for ways that you can encourage one another. So right now, we're going to go to detour groups. And one of the reasons we do detour groups is because God will speak through you. There may be something that someone in your detour group needs to hear, and God is going to speak to you. And you're going to say it. And you're going to think that maybe, it was just something to say, but it is a way that God is going to reveal himself to someone else. So can I ask you, please don't just shut the TV off and go on about your night. Go to exit83youth.com. Go to your detour group, because God may want to speak through you to somebody else. And God may want to speak through someone else to you.